In this Imagine It tech tip, we're going to take a look at the Autodesk Inventor plastic part command called the boss tool. We're going to talk about how to set up a good sketch for this, how to access the command, and also when we're inside of the command, the two different types of bosses we can create, the heads and the threads. The first thing to look at with the boss command is properly setting up a good sketch for it. Here I have a boss sketch that's already been created, and this plane that it's sketched on is the plane that's between these two solid bodies. This also happens to be the XZ plane. So if you want to sketch on the XZ plane, or if you want to do like I did, I just sketched on this plane here of one of the solid bodies. And then inside of this, I have 2 points that have been drawn at 2 1/4 and 4 from the center of the part. Now the way that this works for the boss command is it uses that point, it can be 1 point, 2 points, it can be 10 points, to actually pick up as the starting point for the boss. Now when you build the boss, you have the option to have it build towards one of the 2 solids you have in this particular case. Now in order to begin the boss command, let's make sure we turn it on in our part panel here. So I'll go ahead and go to my end and choose plastic part panel to be turned on. And there I have the boss tool. Once I begin that, you can see it automatically picks up the from sketch center points. If I hit the pull down here, you can see that the on point is also an available method if you had a work point to choose. Now it is currently building itself into the gray solid, and this is currently the head side. If I wanted to go into the other solid, I would have to choose this solid button here and then pick the other solid and then also reverse the direction to have it go up instead. So here I wanted to choose the gray solid. I'll flip it around so I can build my head side going that way. Now I can also add a fillet to this, which I'll go ahead and do that. Let me zoom in a little bit more. We can also do an offset from our sketch plane if we want to start it coming down from that starting plane a little bit, based on how you want to devise your boss. That's your choice. On my head tab here, I can choose the different sizings for the head by filling in these different boxes for the different sizing options. I can choose a counterbore or a countersink method. I also have draft options that I can adjust in here as well. Now the boss command is actually a little bit more specialized than just a dialog box. It actually has the ability to grab some 3D dot and grips and lines inside of your part model. So if I zoom into this one here, I can actually take these lines here and drag them up and down to make changes, and that will adjust my box on the left. So you have these nice dynamic grips, even though it's not very intuitively shown that you can grab on these. But anytime you see a dot or a line, you can press and pull on these to adjust their values. There you can see that. Notice how it does it for each one of these. So if I wanted one boss to be different than the other, I would have to deselect one of these center points to have it basically do one at a time. Next up we have a ribs tab, and currently they're turned off, but I can turn on stiffening ribs, and this will add the stiffening ribs to my design. You can also adjust the rotations, the fillet, and the sizings of these as well. You can also do that with your little 3D grips. So here, I'm going to adjust my height down instead of being 0 to be 0.125, so they go down a little bit. I'm going to adjust my width away from here to be 0.0625, actually 0.625. There we go. Now I want to point out that I'm building this into the sidewall of this plastic part. And that's important because you're going to see what's going to happen with that when I approve this. Let's go ahead and go to a top view here, get a better idea of that. So here I have 3 stiffening ribs. I have my thickness value, my angle, and all my other values filled out, which again we could adjust with these green dots. And I can also add additional fillets if I expand that down even further to this as well. Here I'll grab that grip and just adjust that a little bit further. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with what I see there. I'm going to choose OK to accept this. And there's my bosses. Now what happened in the area where it built into the sidewall? Well, if I zoom in there, you can see it actually blended itself very nicely into that wall. It didn't go beyond it. It didn't error out because the fillets didn't work. It actually blended that rather nicely. Now, if I want to use the same sketches for the other side, I basically need to share that boss sketch. So I turn the visibility back on, restart the boss tool, and this time I'm going to choose the thread side. So you basically have a head and a thread. The only difference here between these two boxes directly is you can see the head and thread will change this middle tab. I want this going into this solid. Notice how that matches up pretty well from my previous choices. I'm going to add a fillet to this as well. On the thread tab, we have a couple of options for how we want to adjust this. Now, in this particular scenario, I do have something threading into it, but if I just wanted this to be an ejector pin, I could uncheck the whole option, and basically I would have a solid piece here that I could use as part of an ejector inside of a plastic part injection molded design. Here I just want the whole option though. I'm going to kind of leave these settings alone, but I do have the same ability here to adjust lines and adjust these points just by dragging them on screen. I also have my rib options here, so I'm going to add some stiffening ribs to this. I'm going to maintain that same orientation to the other side, and I'll choose OK. Now, so I can see those better, I'll go ahead and turn off the visibility of one of my solid bodies here. And you can see the fillets blended in, and those nice threaded side to the boss. I'll turn the visibility back on and turn off visibility of my boss sketch. So that's just one example of how you can use the boss command to very quickly create these shapes. Now, if you were to create these on your own, you can tell that you're going to be using a lot of ribs, a lot of extrusions, a lot of draft commands in order to get the same type of functionality that the boss command does very, very quickly. I only had to have a single center point in order to create that complex geometry there. Now, before the boss command existed, people used iFeatures to do very similar things, but that takes a lot of programming knowledge to set that up, a lot of tabulated values that you have to kind of go through, whereas this command, out of the box, simple to use and fantastic at speeding up your plastic design process.